Hello, my name is woah. For the last 2.5 years, I've spent several thousands of hours on a niche little game called woah, where you collect petals as a little flower. Now, you might be asking yourself, who would spend that much time on something useless like that? Well, to answer that, let me take you back to a sunny afternoon in 2023, right after the end of the pandemic. Back then, I was mainly playing another game called Aras.io, but I slowly lost interest in Aras as every update made the game less and less fun to play. I was basically on the edge of quitting Aras when I suddenly went on a nostalgia trip and remembered a certain IO game released back in 2020 when TFIO wasn't completely dead. The last time I checked, Floor was a fairly boring FFA clone of many other IO games at the time, but whatever turn of fate happened that day, I decided to recheck on Floor to see if anything had changed since, not expecting anything new. First thing I saw was that the game had a tutorial now, which I felt pretty odd about since the Floor IO I remembered was far too simple to ever need a tutorial. And that's when I saw, on the corner of my screen, something I had never seen before. A map, labeled with the words Centralia Fields 1. Until this point in my life, I had never heard the word Centralia before, let alone in a random IO game. And then I saw the players lying around, all level 100 with petals I didn't even recognize. And that's when it hit me. The game that I had played 3 years earlier had become completely unrecognizable. The game that used to be a simple FFA with a leaderboard had utterly transformed into a full-on MMORPG. It was then that I knew that I wouldn't be escaping this rabbit hole for a long time, but even then, I had no idea of the insanity that my 3-year-long journey in this simple flower game would bring. But to understand all this, we need to go back to the start. By the time I first joined Floor, it had already turned into a grindfest gambling simulator where the main goal was to get high rarity petals. Being the ambitious little glutton that I was, I sought to obtain the strongest petals that I could, with the dream of one day becoming the mightiest 4IO player. At the time, the final and most powerful rarity of petals by a long shot were super petals, an item so unbelievably hard to get that less than 100 supers existed more than half a year after their initial release. I instantly knew from then on what my goal would be. And so I started with exploring the vast world of the old map, which was still fairly large compared to today. At first, I believed the best petal I could use to defend myself with were peas, since 4 petals are better than 1. And intuition I quickly dropped when I realized peas were absolute dog. After freeing myself from the curse of peas, I quickly found a new ally, by ruthlessly invading the nearby peaceful ant kingdom and stealing other babies, which I would force into slave labor to do my bidding. Unlike current ant eggs, which take the lifetime of Queen Elizabeth to reload, OG ant eggs reloaded fairly quickly, were trivial to farm at much higher rarities, and automatically hatched, allowing you to attack mobs at a distance at the cost of hundreds of newborn lives every minute. With this special technique, I AFK'd the egg stacks in Anthill and quickly got high rarities of petals, though due to the many other higher level AFKers in the egg zones, it was a struggle to loot. Eventually, I crafted my first mythic egg and was overjoyed at its sheer power, until I got immediately and utterly humbled by max ultra egg users farming the next zone over. By this time, I also had to contend with many mythic soldier ants roaming in the top chambers, which were filled with far more players than most other areas. These soldier ants incessantly annoyed me while I futilely attempted to farm the rest of my mythic egg build, and it was then that I realized that soldier ants were actually kinda nice. You see, soldier ants dropped wings, which were at the time one of the best damage petals due to their range. Stronger petals often killed mythic ants before I could even react, but with mythic wings I could land a few hits and potentially loot even if I was far away from the mob. In Antel 2, it was a constant competition to loot, so this helped a lot, and with my eggs I was able to get mythic wings fairly easily. Also, by this time I created an account and named myself for the first time. For IO games I played up to this point, I named myself woah, which was a problem because, well, woah was taken. Haha, see what I did there? So I was minding my business in Antel when the devs decided to drop a new update which allowed every ultra mob to spawn. I'm too lazy to go over the specifics, but basically soldier ants and babies, as well as technically every other mob, could now spawn as ultras, and from an ultra baby I got lucky with the U-Light, which was my first ultra petal. U-Light was the second most powerful DPS petal at the time, so in other words it was completely useless to me because I had no burr, so I checked in the safe bubble build. After a while I got an ultra wing drop, which was very nice, and then I kept grinding. 2 weeks later, I had around 80 mythic wings clenched in and I could have kept grinding, but at that point saving fatigue had got to me and I thought I had reached the average anyway. It was not the average. So there I stood, hopeful and naive, watching as those mythic wings swirled about with an overwhelming likelihood to fail. You know, if those wings all failed, I probably would have quit the game right then and there. I would have never gotten any supers and I probably wouldn't have started this YouTube channel you're watching right now. But that day, thankfully fate looked the other way. I guess you could call it beginner's luck, but there's something about Antel 2 or NAH nowadays that really resonates with me. It feels like it's the area that belongs to me, you know. Plus, I always get really good luck here for some reason. Shortly after getting 4 Ultra Wings, I quickly obtained an Ultra Leaf as well from a worker ant. With my new collection of Ultras, I felt I was pretty unstoppable, which makes it completely sensible why the next area of my journey was probably the worst one yet. You see, after crafting Mythic Magnet, after spending a little bit of time in Shell Zone, I wanted to get a little spicy and grind a Leech Zone, something I could now do with my Leaf and Wings. I stayed here for a couple of weeks and obtained 80 Fangs, which I still thought to be the average amount needed for an Ultra, something I was proved of very wrong when those 80M Fangs all completely failed. Funnily enough, this was the first time I actually failed a major craft, although I would soon learn it would not be the last. At least during my time in Leech Zone, I got 2 U-Fasters, which made me even more mad, and I joined my first guild, PBJ, and it was with those upgrades that I entered the year 2024 with the confidence to try a new tactic, going back to Antel. You see, bones were the meta at the time due to being unnerfed and therefore ridiculously strong against certain mobs, and so many players at the time had packed their bags and immigrated to TAH, or as the Unks called it, Antel 3, where farmers packed in the U-zones like passengers boarding a Tokyo train during rush hours. A lucky U-Pearl craft did help a lot against termites, depending on your definition of a lot, and because of Ultra Overminds randomly spawning on the map, I got a crap ton of compasses, since at the time U-compasses were literally the easiest Ultra to get in the entire game. Yeah, take that, new players. After some grueling hours of termite control, I crafted more than 100 bones this time, and I got nothing! After the previous loss, this was utterly devastating, but this time, I refused to give up. As they say, quitters never win, and so I got right back to TAH. Now, every ounce of frustration I felt was channeled into violence against the termites, for their heresy at defying me. After even more termite farming, I got 40 mythic bones, and then I crafted, and got nothing. Again. By this point, I had lost all hope of getting an Ultra Bone. By the time I quit TAH, I had failed around 200 Mythic Bones in a month of constant TAH farming. You know when I finally got my first Ultra Bone? Guess. 1 month? 2 months later? Wrong! It took me more than a year after to get my first U-Bone. And it wasn't from the termites. It wasn't from FAH either, if you were guessing that, when fire ants were updated to drop bone. No, it was from fire ant holes while farming beetle eggs in desert. I crafted U-Disc before getting U-Bone. I got Ultra Cotton, I got 2 Ultra Corn before U-Bone. Even now with 11 Super Petals, as I am recording this script, I have failed over 150 Ultra Bones as well. For utterly no reason whatsoever, this petal hates me with an undescribable passion. You know when Bone finally got nerfed? I relished that moment. I watched with glee as Bone crumbled to obscurity for being a piece of useless. So where were we? Right, so after Leech Zone I didn't farm any other petal and went straight to my next major farm. Wanna know how long this farm took me? 4 months. You see, I started to do some advanced calculus to find the most optimal petal to farm next, which led me to calculate the best damage per second petal at the time, Bloodstinger. Well, actually, price was higher, but I thought that Bloodstingers were easier to get, which was a very incorrect assumption. But there are a whole lot of other reasons to farm here as well, including getting U-Antenne, U-Bird, U-Cotton, more U-Leaves, U-Bone, heck ton of U-Missiles, you name it. And learning from my previous mistakes, this time I promised myself to not stop until I had saved far more petals than the average, which I still thought was 80 mythics, to ensure I would never fail a craft again. So I set my spawn point to a lean and started farming and farming and farming. Jungle's mobs were incredibly difficult to get used to at first due to being annoying as crap, and all I had were still U-wings, but as time went on those difficulties faded into everyday routine. Every day blended into the last. Soon I stopped counting my progress. Sooner I'd forgotten I was progressing at all. That's what saving for a mega craft feels like. You don't feel like you're progressing at all, just going through motions. It's why I don't really do huge crafts anymore. Saving huge amounts of petals might be exciting at first, but it quickly gives way to mental exhaustion and complete and utter boredom. And sure, I was constantly finding new players to squad and experiencing new updates that did nothing but make the game 1% worse. But when nothing really changes, you start to think, you know, why not just craft already and get it done with? Then everything changed. First, the developer made Ultra Mobs, which were formerly boss monsters with cool abilities, into normal monsters with no cool abilities. Then, in the exact same update, he made them spawn in Mythic Zones so often that Jungle basically became unplayable overnight along with basically every other Mythic Zone. Well, I guess it's time to give up. was a good run. With almost none of the hundreds of players protesting in Garden or the many more players who had already quit New at the time, was that 1 week later, 20 added some small map changes, and by small I mean the entire map got completely renovated to what it is today. Maps were merged, talents like Second Chance were added, checkpoints and ramming became the meta, and chaos reigned supreme. For me, of course, I headed straight back to jungle and continued farming. The only change that really affected me was that ultras rarely dropped ultra petals anymore, which is very sad because previously almost half of my ultras came from mob drops. When I was playing Centrale Fields, me and everyone else hated those maps with a passion. They were annoying to traverse, half of the areas were useless, and the actual good areas easily got crowded by tons of guests. But it's only when you lose something forever that you truly realize its value. I miss Centrale. It had a unique MMO-esque charm that was the reason I even started playing this game in the first place. It truly felt like a world of its own. Each major area felt entirely unique compared to the rest of the areas. There's also the ultra boss mobs, which were really fun to play with. The current map feels completely artificial, as do the current ultra mobs. I miss the feeling when mobs were a threat not because they took 10 hours to kill, but because they were dangerous and actually required strategical thinking to defeat. I miss when pay to win wasn't normalized. I miss when Florio was actually fun. Okay, I know I just glazed the crap out of Centrale, but let's be honest here. Centrale kinda sucked. It was impossible to loot anything during Centrale. Everything just got greeted by players. It took 20,000 hours to grind anything other than to super hunt, and let's be honest, super hunting was impossible. Thank God M28 released this update, man. Anyway. But enough messing around, let's talk about my jungle expedition. So, after killing hundreds of mythics over and over, I got a lot of petals, and sometime during late May, I finally decided to craft more than 50,000 legendaries. I had seen insane saves from other people before, but I myself had never been in the presence of so much raw wealth, and all it took was a press of a button to make it all disappear. My jungle megacraft single-handedly doubled my ultra count and transitioned me from an early game to a late game ultra player. By the end of the save, I was absolutely tired of jungle sprites, and returning back to Garden was a huge relief. My next goal was to get ultra bubbles and sand since I had obtained the U-bird, and at the time U-sand walled builds were the meta for super hunting. With my bloodstingers and ultra corn, I terrorized the crabs in Crab Kingdom, and by that I mean the crabs terrorized me instead. The meta at the time was leeching egg squads, since eggs were one of the main petals needed for farming. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a single ultra sand before quitting the zone, although I was lucky enough to get 2 ultra bubbles from less than 20 mythics each. By late June of 2025, this was my build. And fun fact, if you paid attention to the video, unlike 90% of my brain-rotted audience, you'd have noticed that this is the first actual clip I recorded of myself in floor. Up to this point, all of these clips were recorded much later or were borrowed from some other very kind people who agreed me to let me use their clips. Yeah, I really regret not recording more, but regardless, during this time I also started super hunting, which was much harder for me before without U-bubs, and I also started attempting to enter sewer box squads to farm wings. Back then, if you were skilled enough, you could actually bubble to the end of U-zone and reach a sewer squad, or you could then help clear mobs and get a ridiculous amount of wings by leeching. My goal was to attempt to craft a super wing with these ultras, but slowly I learned that even with box rates, I was probably not going to craft a super anytime soon. It would take months of farming at least. So instead, I started going to desert for beetle eggs and farming queens for ultra ant eggs, with the goal of getting a full egg build. At the time, I had 2 ultra ant eggs and not a single beetle egg, which was not even close to what was needed for an egg squad. So I started grinding for eggs. Slowly I learned how slow farming eggs took. Each queen had a 20% chance to drop a mythic egg, and I needed about 120 of those for a single ultra. I was lucky to get 10 mythic eggs in the anthill an hour. In desert, I could scarcely scratch 5. And it's at this point that I quit Florio for the first time. I felt the odds were far too against me. Every super mob was being greeted by 20 super players who out DPS'd me by a mile. Ultra mobs took way too long to kill, and most areas were being greeted by an egg squad. In short, I became a late game ultra player during the era where late game ultra players were by far the worst off. When I look back at those times, historical hindsight really gets to me. I honestly regret I farmed jungle at all. I had enough wings to DPS super mobs at the time. If I put in the effort, I could have probably started super hunting, which would have probably gotten me more ultras, and better ultras than if I had farmed jungle. I could have become a late game ultra player 2 months earlier when the new map was first released. I could have gotten an ultra sand DPS build, allowing me to compete with super hunters. I could have interacted with the community more and learned better strategies. I could have been the ones egging instead of the ones leeching and barely being able to get loot. But theorizing what you could have done is useless. You can't change the past. All you can do is look forward and do better next time. And my next time would soon come in the spring of 2025, when I rediscovered this game after a long hiatus. A lot had changed since I came back, and by a lot I mean basically only one new pretty much unfinished area that I didn't really care about, and something about bone being changed, yeah, who cares about bone? The most important thing to me that was added though was the bonus. Before 2025 there was no bonus, but now you could get 2x and even 3x drops for an hour per day. This essentially doubled my pedal rates since I only really played an hour a day anyway, and this gave me renewed hope to farm desert again. Within a week or two I had obtained enough to Oracle Ultra Beetle Egg, and this is also the same craft that I finally obtained my first U-Bone. Shortly after I killed a Super Leech which dropped my first Ultra Fang. In short succession I had bested both of my old rivals that had plagued me for so long. However, I realized that the meta had changed entirely. Ultra Eggs and Egg Squats were no longer that powerful, and instead a new meta had taken shape in the form of the utterly overpowered Triangle. Triangles, dropped by termites, were by far the most powerful DPS I could obtain at the current era, and now that the Curse of Bone was moved to the Fire Ants, I was able to quickly farm triangles in short succession. And by quickly, I mean quickly. Termites were basically as weak as normal ants at the time, so I was able to get full Ultra Triangles within just a week of farming, and I was flabbergasted at how utterly busted these guys were. Like genuinely, I was talking about the importance of learning from my mistakes and all earlier, but with bonuses and triangles being a thing, it felt like I was basically being spoon-fed progression on a silver platter without me needing to do any work. So, using my triangles, I first went back to Ocean to farm my first actual healing pedal other than Fang, Starfish, and after a short break in Jelly Zone, I then finally decided to actually farm for my first super pedal. Destination, back to the place where it all began. I chose to farm NAH again after all this time for a couple of reasons. One was that it was the fastest way to get any super at the time, well, at least according to my knowledge. That's basically the only reason you need to know. The Antel rework added worms, but most importantly it had added more difficult Antel zones, which made Antel less crowded and easier to farm. Ultra Triangles allowed me to take down Ultra Soldier Ants fairly quickly by myself, and with a squad, which was pretty easy to find here, I could easily get more than 3 Ultras of a single pedal and around 10 Ultras total per bonus. The goal was to farm here for 3 months until I had enough to Oracle Super Glass. This meant it would be by far my largest and most tedious save yet, absolutely humbling the massive jungle megacraft I had done a year earlier, but I was not going to fail all my effort again to RNG if it was the last thing I did, and so I began. This time I made sure to calculate and record my progress as it went to make sure if I was on track or not. Yeah, I am a bit of a nerd. So, bonus after bonus, I farmed in NAH using my Ultra Triangles, good squats or not. My Ultra and Mythic counts reached new, never before seen heights beyond anything I'd even come close to previously. Also at this time, I started to get to know the guildmates in my new guild, Aces, which I joined back in early 2025 when I still had pretty much quit. For now, my guildmates and Aces didn't really squad me in NAH much, except for that one time two had carried me at S-Worm. But this would mark the first time I would truly start to interact and understand the wider floor community beyond just Super Court and the very few 4AO players I knew. But anyway, as the bonuses went by, I reached 100k then 200k legendaries. Week after week went by. But it was when June 1st hit that I realized there was a dire problem. By then I had thought I was almost done with the save, but I looked at the data and realized I had not obtained even 1/3 of the glass needed to Oracle Superclass. Even worse, if I crafted everything I had saved up to that point, I had a 50% chance to not get a single super. If I wanted to Oracle Superclass from this point onwards, I would need to spend at least 4 more months on top of what I had already spent to farm a single area with the same lame mobs day after day after day. I would rather bury myself alive at that point. So I thought for a long time. And then, on July 8th, I came to a decision. Sure, I could sacrifice my well-being, my sanity, and all semblance of fun I had this game to finally finish my goal once and for all. But I have much more important things to be doing than rotting away in a flower game. So I decided to craft there and then, on the very next day, with the full knowledge this time that I would very likely fail everything. But I didn't care. Sometimes, when things don't work out, you just have to let it go. So there I stood, next to the oracle I would never use, surrounded only by my guildmates and my thoughts, watching as I crafted enormous numbers of petals that would mean nothing in the end. But that mattered little to me. Time seemed to slow as I soaked in the moment, and it was there that I knew that even if I failed, it would be worth it seeing all these ultra petals together as proof that I truly tried my best and achieved something to be proud of, even if I fell short in the end. Yet, somehow, as I started my final super attempts, I knew deep in my soul that something was about to happen. When I remember this moment, I look back to almost 2 years ago when I crafted my first 3 U-Wings from 80. Just like that time, if I hadn't crafted a super pedal in this very moment, then from that day onward, I would have never logged on to my Florio account ever again. And this channel would have never come even close to what it is today. All it would have took for the sign of fate to lead me down another path that day was a 3% chance. A 3% chance to craft 3 super pedals from 200 ultras, and the average for one was 253 ultras. I thought I was genuinely dreaming when I crafted those supers. It's a surreal moment I will probably never forget. So there I stood, with 3 new supers at level 111, as one of the luckiest floor players I've ever known now and since. Safe to say after that day a lot more people started to know me. After celebrating for the entire rest of the week by trolling at every super mob I could find, I farmed Desert for a while to get Ultra Magic Stick, a pedal I thought was as good as a super pedal. Skip a month later to when I crafted it, and yeah, it sucked. Using my 3 shiny super pedals against mobs I had previously struggled with for so long at the time felt completely surreal. I'd even completed my Sandwad build, although now it was good as useless. It was at this moment that I genuinely got scared I had accidentally installed a luck hack in my account or something. Combined with the Super Yucca craft later that month, and now I was standing there with 5 supers at level 114. The average for that level at the time, by the way, was 1 super. Through pure RNG, I had basically cheated through the entirety of the early super phase, and was competing with players 10 levels higher than. People were dead certain I had paid to win for my pedals, and I wouldn't blame them. Unfortunately, for all my wealth, I couldn't stop the decline that would soon befall my guild, Aces, as it gradually fell apart due to the leaders and many others leaving the guild. Eventually, me and another player called King Ant concocted a way to revive the guild by leaving it temporarily and going to some other stronger guilds to obtain more super pedals. Then coming back once we had enough supers so that new players would be motivated to join again. So to complete this master plan, I eventually decided to join Gale. I was fine with this since Gale at the time was a really good and chill guild. My first plan was to AFK grind bones in FAH, a plan which obviously failed because, well, it's fucking bone. So instead I began my next major grind, oracling S-Wing in sewers. Now, you might ask why on earth would I want to try and oracle another super after just explaining that I failed to do so after 2 months of non-stop farming. Well, for one, I now had 5 super pedals. The other reason was that sewers was not only as efficient as Dantel, but also provided a higher variety of as well as more valuable drops, including Third Eye, and plus several of my new guildmates in Gale all agreed to farm. Well, actually, I soon learned that the few members who would squad with me wasn't enough to make up for the crippling lack of people farming sewer at the time. That made finding a good squad capable of surviving sewers kinda difficult, and even though I was able to consistently make it to box and even greet some super mobs along the way, my rates continued to fall behind expectations. So, consider it good luck for me, again, that out of nowhere M28 would update sewers to add 2 more mobs and also consequently buff sewers to the point of becoming the single most efficient area in the game to get ultras. On the first release day of this update, ultra garbage bags were actually bugged to infinitely spawn ultra flies, so what me and my buddy Robert did was stand in this zone and use lightning spam to kill U-flies that were constantly spawning from garbage bags, getting almost 10 U-wings and 1 bonus alone. My rates nearly doubled after that update. In fact, one time when the super garbage bag spawned near me and some other people, we AFK'd near it with lightning as it spawned U-flies infinitely, and this incident alone gave me the entire week's worth of sewer bonuses in just a few hours. And all this was before the sewer bat ramming meta became a thing. Oh boy, now we were cooking. Last time I didn't even reach 100 of a single ultra, but now I could easily blast past 200 ultras. By the end of my sewer mega craft, I was nearing 300 ultra wings and poop, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. I remember this period of time in Floor being one of the most exciting due to constant updates, being fairly active in the Floor community due to my connection through Gale and through sending a couple thousand messages in Florio general chat every day for a month straight, and because I could watch the most ridiculous drama implode in Gale's guild chat every day while I was farming. Seriously, that guild had so much drama. For the first time ever, people were actually requesting to squad with me instead of the other way around. Also, it was around now that the single most important thing in my entire Floor journey happened to me. I found woah. Just kidding, it's actually woah with an A, who is a fraud and completely different from me, so don't get confused with him anyway. And it was with that optimism that that I yet again reached higher pedal counts than ever before, as well as getting Ultra Third Eye, a Blood Sacrifice, which I later wasted on a Super Bubble, and eventually 10,000 Mythic Wings. It was finally time for my third and final mega craft. Over 1,000 total ultras, the single largest amount of petals I've ever saved over 3 years of war, all obtained in 3 months' time. This was the culmination of my entire journey thus far. I'll just let the clips play for you. Alright.
That's 3 months.
You're not happy with it, don't worry.
As Talus, 5
There we go.
Okay.
It's not.
That's Rocky.
Nice. There we go.
Okay. Nice.
That was it. Oh, that's big. 3 months for 3 supers. Super Wing, Super Poo, and Super Antennae. Super Antennae was actually pretty lucky and a phenomenal super for super hunting just in general. And the others were just generally good. Well, call me ungrateful, but it felt completely underwhelming. 3 months? For what? And I spent so much effort, so much time, for a little pittance such as this when players who didn't care about such lofty goals crafted super after super 3 times faster and with 9 times more quality than me, when just a few months earlier I was 5 supers ahead of them. RNG works in cycles. It comes and goes. I, after having failed and gained from RNG so much, knew this better than anyone. That's why I chose to do Oracle after Oracle even when everyone else was gambling all their life savings away. But that day when I crafted those 3 supers, a guaranteed chance somehow failed me. That's when I realized maybe RNG wasn't the problem. Maybe those players gambling their life savings away were right. Time after time had proven to me that putting in an ambitious goal and plunging myself headfirst into chasing it would fail every time. Yet I kept pressing forward. I kept progressing. Why? Because of the reason that had motivated me to play the game in the first place. Because it was fun. Every time I had quit or felt behind was because I no longer found grinding to be fun. Blindly aiming for an unachievable goal is not fun. The fun way to play might not be the most efficient way to progress, but it is the only way to keep progressing. The times where I had fun playing the game was the times where I felt I was progressing the most. And that's all that matters. So, I decided from now on that I would no longer play the game for the sake of reaching new heights in supers, or becoming the greatest Florio player of all time. Instead, I would play Florio for myself. And the best thing for me that I wanted to do now was to quit again. I recently returned to Florio in April of this year and found the landscape completely changed in my absence. For one, Aces had been partially revived, and now that Tuya and Bobby, the 2 most important members of the guild, had started playing again and crafting supers. How did Bobby get 15 supers already? Along with a bunch of our other OG members. Gale, on the other hand, much to my surprise, had completely died off and was deleted. Although many of the former Gale members would eventually join other guilds like Grim, and in the process completely surpass me. I'm looking at you, super heavy user. In fact, in the 3 months I left, supers became far easier to get for new players, and super petals became even more inflated than they had before. Great news for me, am I right? This was mainly due to bat ramming rising in popularity, a growing user base of Asian players, and the fact that super mobs got massively buffed drop rates. Also in the script here it says dropped buff rates. How did I... Anyway, in fact, super hunting became so much more profitable that I decided to start super hunting for petals instead of farming. I'd been practicing my ability to enter the Ultra Zone in NAH, which was made possible due to lentil builds becoming a thing, and using this build, which I still use now, I looted and learned to even leer many NAH supers in U-Zone to kill. Soon I crafted 2 more supers, Laser and Relic, finally completing my goal of collecting 10 super petals. Kind of a shame it was Relic though. I was also given shared leadership of Aces with Too Good, and using this and the clout I had collected over the years, I worked with them to invite many more members into the guild. With the collective help of many of the OG players of Aces, the guild got to 100 members again and re-reached its prime all the way back in 2025. Well, mostly anyway. With all of these new developments, I got so hyped that I temporarily got back to my old mindset of hyper-focused ambition maxing, with plans to Oracle Escort, but that illusion got shattered after my Mega Craft at the end of May, which got me only only 1 super claw, and also I failed 67 bones. When will I learn? And so that leaves us at the present day. Since then, I've been farming Shell Zone with a goal of oracle Super Pearl, currently one of the highest DPS supers in the game. I would have better progress if I took it more seriously, but well, we've seen how that goes. In the end, despite all the troubles I've whined about over the course of this video, it really is crazy how far I've come since that fateful day nearly 3 years back. If you would have told me back then I would one day get 11 super petals, I think you were... Actually, I know my cheeky ass would have barely been surprised. On Jira's 4-hour leaderboard of every super player, I'm currently the 1,533rd richest player in the game. But Jira's biased, so who cares anyway. As of the completion of the script, it has been 998 days since I first started playing 4. And the cool thing about being in the community for so long is seeing how much change that occurs. As for myself, I still play fairly actively, and if you see me, don't talk to me if you're poor, I only talk to rich people. Take that, communists. I know many of you would want to watch me craft tons of supers or do crazy theatrics, but those times will come when I'm in the mood for them. My choices are for what I want alone, after all. But that doesn't mean I'm abandoning my goals anytime soon. One day, I might far surpass what I've achieved in these few years. One day, I'll finally get my revenge on the things that have been evading me for so long. One day, I'll finally find who took woah.